Vous écoutez Le Voyage du Héros. Je m'appelle Jeff Garvin.
Und ich heiße Dan Zarzana.
Que le voyage commence. Thank you to our patrons for helping to make this episode possible. Visit patreon.com/heroesjourney to learn how you can support the hero's journey. If demigod patrons Dean Ethington and John Peterson Jr. were here right now, they would cordially invite you to sit with them.
Jeff, I'm so proud of you.
Why?
Every episode you say Pedersen, and I have to correct you, and we cut it.
I'm sorry,
and
John.
You got it right this time. I'm so proud of you.
John, I'm so sorry.
John's proud of you, too.
I love you, John.
They're not here, but we are, and we do invite you to join us for the Hero's Journey analysis of Quentin Tarantino's Inglourious Basterds.
The sixth film by Quentin Tarantino, Inglourious Basterds, was released just over a decade ago.
I can't believe that.
On August 21st, 2009, and went on to ring up a $320 million worldwide box office gross.
Not bad.
At the time, this was Tarantino's second highest grossing film. It has since been eclipsed by Django Unchained and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Inglourious Basterds was nominated for 8 Academy Awards, including Best Picture. The Hurt Locker took that crown. But Christoph Waltz, a newcomer to American audiences, he won Best Supporting Actor. This was the first of 2 that he would win. The second coming in 2012 for Tarantino's Django Unchained.
Brad Pitt's mug is the biggest on the poster. His mug. But the film contains a number of excellent performances by German and French actors who, like Christoph Waltz, were mostly unknown to American audiences. This is also a film in which less than half of the dialogue is spoken in English. That's very unusual for an American film written and directed by an English-speaking director.
Right.
We hear French, German, Italian, and canine.
That is a French dog, so...
Yeah, well, and its name, I don't know if you know this, its name was Christoph Wolff.
Shut up. I want to believe that that's true, but you just made it up on the spot, I can tell.
No, I did deep research.
The language is such a brave choice, but I think it's absolutely the correct choice for this film.
Yeah.
I prefer to hear actors speak their native language if it's a film that takes place with foreign characters and in that foreign country. It just is so much more authentic than having actors doing a bad accent of some kind.
Yeah.
So I'd rather read the subtitles. I know some people hate subtitles, but...
So Tarantino is famous for his dialogue. And what a brave choice to have your big strength get taken away. But then I thought, no, it's the opposite. He gets to show you the script in big yellow print across the bottom of the screen.
Good point.
So you get to appreciate it. But 20 minutes into the movie, Christoph Waltz says, maybe we should speak some English.
That was a hysterical moment.
Yeah.
In the theater. I saw this movie in the theater, and when he says that to Monsieur Lapadite, he says, I've exhausted my French, and to speak it in your home so inadequately, so let's switch to English since I understand that you speak English as well. That got a big laugh in the theater, because I think a lot of people were wondering if they were just going to be reading subtitles this whole film.
I was so surprised by how much I love this movie. I missed it in the theater. I was just like, oh, that looks like the downfall of Quentin Tarantino.
Really?
I thought the trailers to me looked so tongue-in-cheek and over the top. I think because they opened with Brad Pitt's monologue as he's walking back and forth, and it was such a shock to see him playing such a character. It looked to me like Tarantino trying to do Coen Brothers, and I was just like, So I didn't watch it. And then as I was watching it these past few weeks, I think this is my favorite Quentin Tarantino movie. Maybe second favorite behind Pulp Fiction, just because I saw Pulp Fiction when I was in film school. It had such a great impact on my creative development.
Right.
But this is such a great movie. I loved it.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. This may be my first or second favorite Tarantino film now, especially having watched it so many times recently.
Yeah. Okay, the mission is a go. Study your French phrasebook, polish your boots, and attendez la crème. It's time to drop behind enemy lines with Inglourious Basterds.
Okay.
I respectfully request
Yes.
that in honor of Brad Pitt's performance as Lieutenant Aldo the Apache Rain, and in the interest of making both ourselves and our audience laugh after a tough week, that we pronounce the word normally that rhymes with Yahtzee as Nazi.
Nazi. All right, let's begin with Act 1. Step 1. This is where we see our main character in their status quo normal life. Now, immediately, here's where we're going to start to fight.
Yeah.
Because, and I started laughing when I was thinking, okay, so we've probably got multiple heroes. I think Shoshana is kind of the main hero of this story because she's got the biggest arc.
Agreed.
But, as you always say, if the title refers to a character, that character, absolutely, without a doubt, no arguments, must be the main character.
Obviously.
But I would agree with you, I think, in this one. The Bastards as a group are like a collective hero unit. They are a military unit, so they have their own journey. It just doesn't have as much of an arc as Shoshana's journey.
I had the same conversation with myself as I was beginning this.
Oh,
I was
interesting.
Like, is this an American president scenario? Is this a Shawshank Redemption scenario?
Yeah.
I came to a different conclusion. Tarantino structures his film like no other director.
Yes.
He plays with time and emphasis in a way, and I'll kind of insert analysis here and there, but I think Aldo Rain and the Inglourious Basterds achieve or fill out some of the hero's journey functions.
Right.
But mostly I agree with you, Shoshana. It's Shoshana's story.
Okay, cool. So Tarantino introduces this revisionist fairy tale with the Chapter 1 title, Once Upon a Time in Nazi-Occupied France. This was going to be the title of the film at one point, but he wanted to use Inglourious Basterds really badly, so he shifted Once Upon a Time to the Chapter 1 title. We are then introduced to the film's primary villain, the SS Colonel Hans Landa, played Academy Award-winningly by Mr. Christoph Waltz.
Oh, such an amazing performance.
He is charming, he is polite, he is calculating, and he is sinister.
Agreed.
That first chapter, I think, is, as a short film, is perfect.
Agreed.
It's an amazing sequence.
Tarantino knows how to write suspense.
Oh, God.
It's incredible.
Yep. So Shoshana Dreyfus is the daughter of a Jewish dairy farmer hiding out in Monsieur Lapidite's house, trying to flee the German occupation. And Hans Landa is tasked with hunting down all of the Jews left in France. And that is kind of the world of common day for Shoshana. Her life is she and her family, and really all the Jews in that region, in that part of the world at that time, are fleeing for their lives constantly. That's their world of common day. We don't know what her life is like on a normal day when there isn't a convoy of Nazis coming down the road.
All right, so this is where we're going to, our analyses are already diverging.
Oh!
So I think that's all backstory. I don't think that's World of Common Day yet. That's like that prelude in Braveheart.
Yeah.
That's where I saw this. And this is where I want to bring up. So Tarantino, he distorts details. He zooms way in and blows details all out of proportion. Mm-hmm. A great example is the cream in the scene between Hans Landa, right? There's this extreme close-up on the cream.
Yep.
So he blows up these details out of proportion. You go, what's going on here? And this scene between Hans Landa and Monsieur Lapidite, whom we never see again in the film.
Right.
He's on screen for 20 solid minutes. This scene is 21 minutes long. This is another distortion. He's blowing this moment out of proportion. Now, he's doing it to introduce Hans Landa, to set the scene of, Nazi-occupied France. Right. But in any other film, this would have been a 3-minute sequence where they find the people under the thing and Shoshana runs away. It would have been 3 minutes, 5 minutes max. But he takes his time with it. And it's brilliant, and it's like no other director would do it. But to me, this is a tiny piece of backstory to let you know who Shoshana is. But to me, her world of common day is that she's a Jew hiding in France, and she's a cinema owner. And she's living her life undercover as pretending to be a normal French person who's not Jewish. To me, that's her world of common day.
Okay. Yeah. I can't argue with that. I felt like, I guess because that first chapter, like you said, is 21 minutes long, I felt like it's got to be in a segment of the
Right.
journey. It can't just be, I can't just throw that away. It's absolutely critical for the establishment of the villain.
Completely.
You have to know. Later in the film, he does the same thing, where he comes in friendly and smiling, and then he turns real dark.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that first long, drawn-out scene where you actually maybe you don't like Hans Landa, but I found myself amused by him until the end. And then I'm like, holy crap, this guy is dangerous.
Yeah.
He's friendly. You know, this is your home. Smoke your pipe. Make yourself comfortable. May I smoke my pipe? And he pulls out this massive horn.
He stole it from Sherlock Holmes.
Exactly. And it's just these ridiculous, like you say, like moments blown out of proportion.
Yeah.
Even his pipe is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
But all of that sets up Landa, and it's absolutely critical. And that's why I thought, that's gotta be Shoshana's common day. This is what she and people like her have to deal with every day.
Yeah, I would say it's backstory.
I'm with you.
We barely see her until she's running away.
Right. Yeah, I'm with you.
That leads us to Call to Adventure, where the hero is presented with a challenge which renders her unable to continue living in the comfort of the ordinary world. One night in Paris, while Shoshana is changing those big black letters on the marquee of her theater, she's approached by a German soldier, Friedrich Zoller, and she shuns him, but he pursues her. Turns out he's a war hero turned movie star. He held a position as a sniper against hundreds of enemy soldiers and then played himself in an upcoming movie about the event directed by the Nazis' head of propaganda, Joseph Goebbels. She finds this out. She shuns him again. Then 2 Nazis show up at her theater, order her into a car where she is brought to a dinner with Zoller and Goebbels. And here comes her call to adventure. Zoller, the war hero, has persuaded Goebbels, the propaganda master, to consider using her theater for the premiere of his new movie. This is a call in the form of a summons to adventure. She doesn't have a lot of choice because the Nazis are basically in charge, but this is the beginning of her adventure. This is the place where she gets drawn in. So I saw that as the call to adventure.
I mostly agree with you. I drew the line earlier, though. I thought the call was the interactions with Zoller because he has a complicated role to play. He starts as the herald, and then he shapeshifts into an ally, and then he shapeshifts at the end into almost a villain.
Yeah.
Really, he's a jilted lover.
Yeah.
That's his perspective anyway. And it is that relationship that it's not really an adventure, but I don't know. I struggled with this segment. But because of events that happen later, I drew the line at this opening relationship and the cafe conversation and all that stuff. Like all that is the call to adventure, this invitation to establish this relationship with this German soldier who is obviously smitten with her.
Huh.
Because then there's a couple of moments that happen later. You mentioned Major Hellstrom pulls up in the car.
Right.
And says, get in.
Yeah.
And I thought her getting in was crossing the threshold.
Oh, interesting.
She doesn't have a choice.
Interesting.
Like you said, she has no choice in the matter.
Yeah.
She's being dragged into this adventure.
Interesting. Okay, I'll buy that. That brings us to meeting with the mentor. The hero receives counsel on how to operate in the special world. This is where I think you may think I'm going off the rails. I struggled a lot with the structure of this movie, and I think Tarantino skips things, goes back and plays them in flashback. All the elements are there,
totally,
but they don't happen in sequence. And
right.
I'm about to discuss my favorite scene in the movie.
Oh, goody.
The scene I'm fairly certain won Christoph Waltz the Oscar. Landa shows up at the restaurant where Shoshana has been invited to have dinner with Zoller and Goebbels. And we're reminded in flashback that Landa is the man who killed Shoshana's entire family when she was a girl. And Landa excuses everyone so he can have a private word with Emmanuel, Shoshana, who's now goes by Emmanuel. And he is immaculately and suspiciously polite. He orders strudel for both of them. He also orders Shoshana a glass of milk,
yeah.
which he drank in one go when he was at her father's dairy farm, and complimented, oh, your cows and your daughters, I commend you. This is a signal that Landa knows who she is right off the bat.
You think so?
Yeah, absolutely. Bear with me. Just go with me on this theory here.
Okay, all right.
Landa is the mentor here. He's teaching her how to be a good Nazi sympathizer. See, I stumbled over it.
You did.
He's teaching her how to be a good Nazi sympathizer and teaching her if she can leave her past and her Jewish heritage behind, she can have a glamorous life. He does this by politely intimidating the shit out of her. But in another of Tarantino's distortions, we do this extreme close-up on the cream. So he orders the strudels and then says, oh, I forgot the cream. And then they bring the strudel, and there's an extreme close-up of the waiter, like, scooping the cream and dolloping it onto the strudel. The cream represents the good life Shoshana can have if she abandons her past and complies with the Nazis. And at the end of the scene, it comes into play again. And by the way, just side note, this scene is so great. I mean, the Foley of Landa chewing... This is why this film earned a sound mixing Oscar nomination.
Yeah.
Anyway, at one point he gives her a cigarette and he says,
Elles sont pas françaises. Elles sont allemandes.
These are not French, they're German. She's saying, side with the Germans. The Germans have won. You're smoking their cigarettes, you're eating their food. And it reminded me of another Tarantino scene from Crimson Tide. So Tarantino did an uncredited rewrite.
What?
Yeah. He did an uncredited remake of Crimson Tide. And you can hear it in that scene between Denzel and Gene Hackman where Captain Ramsey and Hunter are talking about the Lippenzahner stallions. He says they're from Portugal. They're the most highly trained horses in the world, and they're all white. And Denzel says, yes, sir, I've seen them, but they're from Portugal, not from Spain. And at birth, they're not white, they're black. So there's this subtextual racial thing going on.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Holy crap.
So,
Jeff, I am blown away by this analysis that you've done. I am stunned.
Bear with me.
No. In a good way.
Oh, good.
I'm amused right now. I'm on the edge of my seat.
Would I amuse you? I'm here to amuse you, my clown.
Okay, continue.
So that back.
Excuse me. Continue.
At the end of the scene, we're back in the movie we're analyzing right now. We're back in Inglourious Basterds. Bear with me. Oh, one more sidebar. This reminds me of another
sidebar of a sidebar.
Another scene in a Tarantino movie, True Romance.
Yep.
The scene between Christopher Walken and Dennis Hopper. All subtext. Remember having that conversation about Sicilians have black heritage and you have black blood running through your veins, and you can see Christopher Walken just becoming furious, and the whole time Dennis Hopper is just trying to get him to shoot him instead of torture him. It's all subtext. It's a great power play.
Wow.
Anyway, at the end of the scene with Landa and Shoshana, he says,
Il y avait une autre chose que je voulais vous demander.
Oh, there was something I wanted to ask you.
Uh-huh.
Mais maintenant, sur ma vie, impossible de m'en souvenir. Enfin, bon, ça ne devait pas être important.
Oh, but I forgot what it was. It must not be important. And that's the key there. It must not be. The thing that I wanted to ask you isn't important. Your heritage isn't important. The fact that we have a prior relationship, none of that's important. You be a good girl and go along with this and your life will be good. And then he takes the cigarette and he crushes it out in the cream. The German cigarette into the cream. That's the threat. Everything that's beautiful and great in your life will be crushed if you don't play along. That is the mentor scene. He is teaching her how to have a good life. And her meltdown when he leaves the room, she's fine. He leaves the room and she melts down. That was an extraordinary performance. I'm so bummed she didn't get nominated for this. It rivals the Emma Thompson scene in Sense and Sensibility when she finds out Edward isn't married and she just like shudders and sits down and she's weeping. So I know it's an unconventional take, but if you look at the rest of the movie, Shoshana takes his advice on the surface. She plays along. She stops being the resistant, I'm not going to play along, I'm not going to date you, you're going to have to drag me. She starts playing along, and she's quiet and compliant outwardly. Meanwhile, underneath, she's plotting her revenge.
Yeah.
So that's my take on Meeting with the Mentor.
I'm just going to quit the podcast right now.
Well,
I am absolutely stunned and impressed by that. Holy crap, Jeff. Like that's done. That's it. That's it. There's nothing more to be said. It's done. And here's the thing. That was so good that I can't even argue that because I put that scene
in tests
as Shoshana's ordeal.
Oh, wow.
That is her ordeal. What? She is confronted with the man who murdered her entire family. And it's a situation where she is locked in one-on-one with this man, and he's doing to her exactly what he did to Monsieur Lapidite. It's this friendly conversation, interview, and then at the end, he says, there's one more thing I wanted to ask you. And then he gets that look on his face that is exactly the same look that he gave Monsieur Lapidite right before he said, you're harboring enemies of the state, aren't you?
Right.
It's the exact same look.
Yeah.
And so you think, because it's a Tarantino film and you know nobody is safe,
right,
that this could be the end for her. Now he knows who she is.
Yeah.
And you see it on her face at the end, when she has her meltdown. Like that was an ordeal for her. That's why I put that scene as the ordeal. But holy crap, dude. I'm out. You just I'll just listen and you do the rest of the show, cuz
it's so frustrating.
That was incredible.
Oh, thanks.
Blown away.
It's so frustrating in this movie. And you'll make fun of me for being like how much I stick to Sid Field's screenplay structure. 30 minutes of act 1, 60 minutes of act 2, 30 minutes of act 3, 2-hour movie, cut to credits, bomb. But I had to take out the first 20 minutes of this movie. And if you take out the first couple of chapters are all 20 minutes long. So if you take out chapter 1, this falls in the right zone for meeting with the mentor.
Yeah. And also, I didn't see a mentor anywhere in this film. And that's partially why I'm just so knocked over by this, is that I'm done. I can't anymore. I shouldn't be expected to.
All right, so it's your turn.
I mean, I've already. What is there to say? Crossing the threshold, where the hero must pass a barrier to enter the special world. This crossing represents the hero's commitment to taking on the adventure. So I already stated that I'm 10, 15 minutes behind you now, because I thought the crossing of the threshold. First, the call was, get in Major Hellstrom's car because we're taking you somewhere. And she's resistant. She's afraid, of course. Right. She asks, what have I done? And Major Hellstrom just says, get your butt in the car.
Yeah.
That's what I saw was the crossing of the threshold. So from your perspective, I want to hear what the next crossing of the threshold is, because it's probably the freedom to live for me.
No, so to me, the crossing is the threshold when she gets back to the cinema and she lays out her plan to burn down.
I know what you're gonna pick. When she she escorts. Well, Dr. Goebbels and his escort, they leave, and then she comes back in, and she throws the double doors open wide, and she walks in very slowly, pondering her plan. Entering those doors into her cinema again, planning to burn it down now.
Ooh, that's solid.
If I'm restructuring my entire analysis on the nuke you just dropped on me with the strudel scene, then that may be a crossing of the threshold.
That visual is absolutely right.
Yeah.
The part I had identified is when she unpacks her plan to burn down the cinema and enlists Marcel. Because that's when you tell someone else your plan, he could have ratted her out or whatever, but that was the crossing of the threshold.
Yeah. But she states, though, that I'm telling you this plan because I love you and you love me and you're the one person in this world that I can trust.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know how to say that in French, but
it's like that, only sexy.
Yeah, right.
So I just want to point out 3 chapters and an hour into the movie, we're still in Act 1. This is the end of Act 1.
Right. Well, it's almost a 3-hour movie, isn't it? 2 hours and 40 minutes or something. Yeah. It's very long.
I see this as a function of those distortions that Tarantino plays with. The opening scene is one distortion, and then the backstory about Aldo and the Inglourious Basterds is a second distortion, and that's 40 minutes of the movie. So in the hands of another writer, this might have made up 10 minutes of screen time and we'd be on track. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? If you account for those distortions.
Yeah. How about for the Bastards? Do we have some steps for them? There's, I think, the opening monologue of Lieutenant Aldo Raine saying, I'm putting together a special team, and here's what we're going to go do. That's a call to adventure for those men.
Absolutely. I'm going to make some assertions about what functions of the story that sequence makes when we're in Act 2 of the hero's journey.
Oh, you're gonna do this all like Tarantino and do it all out of order and distorted. And I'm just gonna sit back and watch this show because this is fascinating. All right, let's end Act 1. Let's take a break because I need a nap. I need to refocus. I need to do some yoga.
Touch your chakras.
Moving on. First break. Here we go. Wow. I think we should call this segment Side Quests.
Yes, I'm in.
Okay. So, Jeff, what's the first side quest on your adventure journal?
I am listening to the audiobook of The Crystal Shard, which is the first book in the Icewind Dale trilogy by R.A. Salvatore, set in the Forgotten Realms. So this is a fantasy novel. It takes place in the same world of the Dungeons & Dragons campaign that I am currently DMing.
Yep.
And I found a Reddit thread by R.A. Salvatore about the order in which he recommends you read the Forgotten Realms novels. So this is the one I chose.
All of the Forgotten Realms novels, or just his?
All the Forgotten
Because he's
Realms
written
novels.
half of them.
Yeah, they're all of them.
And they're all about Drizzt Do'Urden.
Yeah. So I'm about 3/4 of the way through. I mean, it's like a great Dungeons & Dragons campaign where there's lots of battles leading to other battles. It's very much a Lord of the Rings analog, and the writing it's kind of what you expect from, kind of like pulp fantasy. Every dialogue attribution has an adverb. It's not awkwardly bad, but it's not great. There's not a lot of character development, but it's fun to be in that world and to experience that story. But I don't think I'll read the rest of the series.
Well, there's 20-something books in that series, so maybe that's where all the character development takes place.
I think if I discovered it when I discovered Dragonlance, I would have chewed through the whole thing. But it's not enough for me now. And then the second thing I'm reading is The Institute by Stephen King.
Oh, yeah. This is a brand new one.
I love it. I'm having a great time reading this book.
Is it a big, thick Stephen King tome?
Yeah, it's
How does he do that?
Pretty thick.
How does he write such massive books, like so consistently?
I don't know. I mean, how does...
He just pours out of him. It's incredible.
He's like an Olympic athlete of writing fiction. He just gets into the... I will say, as I spend more time in publishing, this book is a little under-edited. There are some things that I've caught where I was like, oh, that's... One more pass would have gotten rid of that. But,
like just awkward phrasing or...
Yeah, little...
Like text errors or...
Yeah, not just things that on a closer look you would have changed because they don't quite flow. Awkward phrasing, repeated words that stick out, but I'm loving it. So Crystal Shard and The Institute, that's what I've been reading.
Great.
How about you, Dan? What are you reading, watching, playing?
I have been reading a book called The Gone Away World by Nick Harkaway, who is I think he's the son of John le Carré.
Whoa.
I believe. So he's got some literary history in his family there. I'm having a hard time categorizing it. It's not sci-fi, it's just fiction. Is the category on the book itself. It's in the fiction section. But it is about a guy who I guess is trying to navigate the world after a global war in which bombs are used that negate matter, basically.
Like antimatter bombs?
The go-away bomb was designed to be the most humane weapon ever. That when it drops, the explosion radius, it just makes stuff not be there anymore.
Wow.
It doesn't blow, it's
just gone.
It doesn't destroy matter, it just makes it go away. And it was supposed to be humane unless you just happen to be standing partway in the radius of that bubble, and then suddenly like half of your body is just gone, and then suddenly you don't feel like it's quite humane anymore. So but also what has happened is that this negation of reality seems to have opened a rift in reality, and and the stuff of nightmares comes through. It's the world is, there are fewer safe places in the world now than there were. They have to construct this kind of bubble of safety, of a livable zone where the remaining population can live. And there's this pipe that goes all the way around it, and it emits this stuff.
I'm reading this. I'm in.
It's bizarre, but it is so fascinating. It's not a fast read. I've been reading this book for several weeks now, and I'm probably only 3/4 of the way through it. It is not a page turner. I have to concentrate on every page. It's just it's so dense and chunky and great. I'm really enjoying it.
I'm going to read that when you read This Is How You Lose the Time War.
Oh, okay.
Awesome. Well, we're going to refresh our coffee, and we'll be back with Act 2. Act 2 begins with tests, allies, enemies, the road of trials. Now, in the special world, our hero makes allies, meets enemies, and must pass a series of tests to prove her worthiness. This is a pretty black hat, white hat situation, with very few exceptions. So allies would be Lieutenant Aldo Raine, Brad Pitt's character, in a great performance with a stunningly weird Tennessee backwoods accent.
Yeah. I did not care for him the first time I saw the movie.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. It seemed too cartoony, over the top. But I've seen the movie several times since then, and now I appreciate what he did.
You know, when you're Brad Pitt, I think you have to make bold choices to separate yourself from
being Brad Pitt.
all the roles you've ever played. Yeah, I think Johnny Depp does a good job at that. It's tough for actors who are really good looking and they're stuck playing that guy. His band of misfits, the Inglourious Basterds, right? These guys with such improbable names. Donnie Donowitz, Hugo Stiglitz, and of course BJ Novak as PFC Smithson Utovich, et cetera, those guys. And then we meet Michael Fassbender as Lieutenant Archie Hickox of the Royal Air Force. Is he Her Majesty's Secret Service? I didn't really...
Well, he's wearing a green, like a commando beret. So he's definitely a special forces kind of guy.
And then there's his scene with Mike Myers as General Ed Fennick. So they're in this gigantic, like, it's like the Black Lodge from Twin Peaks, because it's not really a defined space. And then Winston Churchill is sitting in the room, like way in the back, and Fassbender keeps looking at him like, why are we not addressing him at all? This is awkward.
Yeah.
And Mike Myers, in a very understated performance, he's just trying to be normal, but he's Mike Myers, so he's doing his British accent. The bars in the globe. I mean, it's just weird. It's as if in their introducing Operation Kino, which is the military side that collides with Shoshana's revenge plot.
Right.
So, but it's this weird, hey, I know I have to get some expo in here. I'm just going to make it bizarre so you're into it. And Fassbender is so great. Normally he plays these sort of disturbed guys or, really intense. And he's just kind of like, hey, I'm a spy. Quite lovely.
Yeah, his accent there is really great. I love it when they toast.
What should we drink to, sir? Well, down with Hitler.
All the way down, sir.
Yes.
And this is the way he says that. I'm like, wow, that just dripped.
So great. Dripped, yeah. So other allies would be Bridget von Hammersmark, the German movie star who spies for the Brits. And I also want to name here Pierre Lapidite at the very beginning of the movie. He's the French dairy farmer who tries to hide Shoshana and her family.
Yeah.
He holds out for a long time.
Yes.
Until it's clear that
he has no choice.
That there's nothing he can do anyway. And his performance is so low-key and subtle. I think he's as good an ally as anyone could be at that point.
His name is Denis Ménochet. He's one of those amazing French actors that you were talking about at the beginning, where they're unknown to American audiences, but you take notice. You are drawn in because of this guy's performance.
I don't remember who cast this movie, but it is impeccably cast.
The casting team actually won an Artios Award for this film. It's the Casting Society of America's awards program. The U.S. casting was done by Joanna Ray and Jenny Ju. They're the ones who were granted the Artios Award. I know there was French and German casting as well. I don't know if they received any awards, but...
Awesome. Well, they deserved it. The enemies here: Colonel Hans Landa, Christoph Waltz, of course. Friedrich Zoller, like you said, is a shapeshifter, right? He starts out as an ally, and then he becomes a villain.
Yeah. I actually, like, when you first meet him, he seems like a good guy.
Yeah.
He's just happens to be wearing a German uniform. And so if you're on the Allies' side, that makes him an enemy, but he seems like a kind of a good guy.
Yeah, it seems like there's going to be this two sides of the war, romance.
Yeah.
And then when you look back on that first scene, you can see him sort of choking down, "Don't you know who I am?" and playing nice. And then there's that scene where they're in the cafe and people keep coming up and going, "Oh my God, you're Frederick Zoller."
Yeah.
And
Since yes.
yeah, and she's intrigued, but also like, nah, I don't like this guy.
Right.
And then you can start to see a little bit of the false humility coming through. Like he thinks he's a big deal and he's trying to be modest, but he thinks. Anyway, and then Major Dieter Hellstrom, who is my second favorite villain in this movie. And then, of course, the Nazis. So this is where my analysis...
Well, Goebbels.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
He's got a big part in this, too.
He's a Nazi.
He's a Nazi.
Yeah. He's great, too, the guy who plays Goebbels.
Yeah.
It's like, he's clearly got some weird stuff going on. And his secretary / translator, and then they have that one clip of them going at it, and he's like squealing.
Yeah, it's like, what in the heck?
What a great, bizarre character development moment.
Yeah.
This is where I think my analysis is the weakest. I think the best expression of the tests in this movie, to just have them be tests, are the things that the bastards have to go through to get to this point.
Right.
But I also think everything Shoshana goes through is a test.
Yeah.
From the Frederick Zoller interactions to when Hellstrom and his deputy arrive, and to the mentor scene, to the scene with Goebbels, to Landa saying you have to run the projector. All those are tests. They're just smashed in concurrently with these other elements.
You ready to move on to Approach to the Inmost Cave? This is where the hero reaches the edge of a dangerous place, where the object of their quest is hidden. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Like I've already said, the strudel scene with Landa, I thought, was the ordeal for Shoshana, and so the approach was immediately prior to that with the discussion with Goebbels.
Okay.
Where he's interviewing her about the amenities of her cinema and that kind of stuff. That is one of the aspects of the ordeal, is like the concept of the belly of the beast. And she's sitting directly next to the second in command. So where do you take it then?
Remember how we're talking about different characters take on different aspects of this narrative structure of the movie. So obviously every character has their journey, but if we're looking at the narrative arc of the film as a whole, I think the Inglourious Basterds get most of the tests, and they also get the ordeal. The ordeal in this film, to me, is clearly the Mexican standoff in the basement of the tavern.
Yep.
So the approach here...
I've got that as well.
Okay, good. So the approach here is... part of it is the scene with Fassbender and Myers, where we learn about Operation Kino. It's a plan by British intelligence to assassinate a handful of high-ranking Nazis. See, it's going to make us laugh. All at once by blowing them up at the premiere of the propaganda film in Paris.
Yep.
The same premiere we know is about to take place at Shoshana's Cinema. So this is where we start to go, oh, damn.
Yeah.
This is going to be messy in true Tarantino fashion.
Uh-huh.
And this is with the help of German movie star Bridget von Hammersmark and the Inglourious Basterds, led by Lieutenant Aldo Rain. So Hickox joins up with the Bastards, and Hickox and Stiglitz are dressed as SS officers, and they're going to make contact.
And Vicky.
And that's right.
Wilhelm Vicky. I love that guy's voice.
Oh, yeah.
That guy's just baritone. I love it when he speaks German.
Aber wenn du die Uniform ablegst, weiß niemand mehr, dass du Nazi warst.
They're going to make contact with Bridget von Hammersmark. And in this approach scene, they're discussing the rendezvous and its ill-chosen location in the basement of the tavern.
Well, you don't got to be Stonewall Jackson, though. You don't want to fight in a basement.
I loved the interaction between Hickox and Stiglitz.
Yeah.
Where he's like, I hope that we can all remain calm. Because Stiglitz is just sharpening his knife. He's ready to murder Nazis.
Yep.
And Hickox is like, hope we can remain calm.
I don't look calm to you.
Yeah. Well, when you put it that way. And then another thing where he walks up to Brad Pitt and says, your sergeant isn't much the loquacious type. And Brad Pitt goes, that the kind of man you need, loquacious type. So it's a great division of American style military tactics and British style. That's the approach to the cave.
Yeah. I loved the tension of the card game.
Well, you're skipping into ordeal now, baby.
I've already talked about my ordeal.
Oh.
All right, go ahead with your ordeal.
Let's move on to ordeal. This is the hero facing the ultimate test, often risking death to overcome his fear, sometimes appearing to die or actually dying. So yeah, it's the Mexican standoff. And I love it that Brad Pitt finally says Mexican standoff. Every Tarantino movie has a Mexican standoff, and finally someone's calling it what it is in dialogue, which I don't think we've heard in a Tarantino movie before, have we?
Not that I specifically recall.
Yeah, I don't recall.
know.
Yeah, so this is the ordeal in the basement between Hickox and Stiglitz and Wiki on one side, and Major Dieter Hellstrom on the other, and the bartender and the Nazi officers at the other table, and Bridget von Hammersmark, a beautiful, famous, larger-than-life woman. Here's the goddess.
Yes.
And also the temptress, in a way. Everything goes wrong, and you've got Stiglitz with his, I think it's a Walther, pointed at Hellstrom's genitals.
Yeah.
And
at this range, I'm a regular Frederick Zoller.
Yes, such a great line. And then you've got Dieter has his gun under the table pointed at Hickox, and Hickox has his gun under the table. And of course, he has this great moment where, he says,
There's a special rung in hell reserved for people who waste good scotch. Seeing as I may be rapping on the door momentarily, I must say, damn good stuff, sir.
but he doesn't sip it or enjoy it. He shoots it.
Downs the
He
whole
shoots.
thing. Yeah.
And I've done shots of whiskey many times, but scotch,
no.
that's not something you shoot. That'll burn.
Yeah, that's like Hellstrom says. He says, I like scotch, but scotch doesn't like me.
Yeah. In this movie, I thought Fassbender is Bond. Hell yes. I would watch a James Bond movie with Fassbender. Love that scene. And then, of course, the shooting begins. And in true Tarantino fashion, almost everybody dies. And when the bullets are done flying, it's the bartender who just had a son. No, it's not the bartender.
It's one of the German soldiers.
It's one of the German soldiers
that are down there.
who's
They're
just
all
had
celebrating
right.
the birth of his son.
So he's the one
which
who
is why
survives.
they're there.
Right.
Where there weren't supposed to be any Germans in that French pub.
Right.
Yeah.
So he's alive. He's trying to stay alive for his son. Bridget von Hammersmark, we think she's shot, and then she's not dead. That's the death and appearing to die.
Oh, okay.
She represents that function. And then Brad Pitt is up there calling down the stairs. All right. So he's negotiating.
The soldier's name is Wilhelm, and he keeps calling him Willie.
Yeah. So they negotiate a ceasefire, and then, of course,
no guns me, no guns you.
Max's father gets capped. And
by Bridget von Hammersmark.
Yeah.
That was a surprise.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't expect her to do that.
Yeah, proving that she's a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah.
I do see some atonement with the father here. The father ultimately is probably Hitler, and the Nazis are his representatives. And in this scene, Hellstrom is the father, revealing the spies for what they really are.
Right. He is imposing. I mean, if you look at German World War II, particularly dress uniforms, they're handsome-looking uniforms in an evil way.
Yeah.
And even amongst a bunch of Nazi officers, an SS officer and their uniform with their long black trench coat and their bright red swastika armband and that hat that they've got.
Virtually
that's terrifying.
Every film that's ever been made with a dystopian theme has used Nazi uniforms as the iconic
Starship Troopers.
Yeah, Starship Troopers, V.
V, yeah, right.
The First Order in Star Wars. I mean, their uniforms were so powerful.
I feel like I interrupted you. You were talking about Major Hellstrom representing the father in that scene. Did you have more to talk about?
Right.
Or?
So atonement with the father. This is the first time violence is exchanged between Americans and British and Nazis. This is the first time shots are fired in this movie. Everything else is subtle. I mean, no, I mean, there's the Inglourious Basterds chapter, right, where they're scalping Nazis. But this is the first time.
And the bear Jew,
so good.
Has his scene with that poor sergeant.
Right. So this is the first time in the main plot of this movie where our side is trying to accomplish their goal, and it comes to violence. So that's that atonement. That reckoning.
And they lose.
Yeah.
You know, what we see so far is the bastards being successful all along the way.
Right.
Even Hitler knows who they are and is flummoxed by them, and he is demanding that his military bring the bastards to him.
Right. So everything goes wrong, and details that we discover later are the undoing of the bastards here.
Now we're on to the ultimate boon or reward. I saw with the strudel scene between Londa and Shoshana being Shoshana's ordeal. We disagree on that. We've already discussed it. Then the reward.
Hold on. I think your analysis that that's Shoshana's ordeal is really insightful. It's the thing that catapults her into her road back. So I don't think you're wrong.
Okay.
I just think in the narrative arc of the film as a whole, but there's that Tarantino thing again.
Right.
You know, he's weaving multiple narratives into a master narrative.
Okay, so then Shoshana's ultimate boon, it's not a reward that she was looking for, but the Germans have decided that they are now going to host their film premiere at her cinema. This grants her the opportunity for vengeance.
Yes. It's a great boon. My take on it, again, from the zoom out of the whole movie, is the Aldo Rain side of that, which is they capture / meet with / torture.
Poor von Hammersmark.
Bridget von Hammersmark.
That sound effect of him
the
sticking his
squishy-
finger in her bullet hole in her leg, and it goes...
The sound editing is part of what makes you so uncomfortable in this movie.
Yeah.
So she tells Aldo that the venue of the premiere has changed and that Hitler's going to be there. So
yes.
I think the boon is the revelation of that information. That was part of the reason they were meeting with Bridget von Hammersmark, was to find that out. And then it's von Hammersmark really who comes up with the plan for them to join her at the... No, it's Aldo, actually, that says...
You're getting us in that premiere.
Yeah, we're going to act as Italian members of the Italian... So they come up with the plan where they're going to attend with her and assassinate everybody with explosives.
Part of the boon is that because the new location is half the size of the previous location, the explosives that they've brought are going to have twice the effect.
Right. That's the end of Act 2.
My goodness.
Let's get us into a bottle of something.
Drink? If you offered me a scotch and plain water, I could drink a scotch and plain water. That a boy, Lieutenant? Make it yourself like a good chap, will you? The bar's in the globe.
For new listeners, hopefully there are some new listeners. For new listeners, the drinking segment here is where we find a themed beverage that hopefully connects in some way to the subject of the podcast. And so I'm going to hand what is now a 2-year-old ceremonial bag across the table to you. I don't know what the heck just happened to you.
What I have just opened is a bottle of 33 straight bourbon whiskey, my favorite alcoholic beverage in the world. And this is from Cutler's in Santa Barbara.
Cutler's Artisan Spirits in the Funk Zone in Santa Barbara. We have been fans of this whiskey for a long time. I discovered it several years ago on a trip to Santa Barbara. And 33 is a reference to 1933, which is the year the Prohibition Act was revoked in the United States. The reason I picked it for this film, and actually you called it out originally, you might have put the idea in my head, was during the bar scene, you had said that the scotch that Major Hellstrom orders is a 33-year-old scotch.
Yes.
And so when he calls out, he says, Erik, die 33er.
He
says the 33. So, and you mentioned that, and I don't know if you remember mentioning that, or if you expected me to pick the 33 for this episode.
Never occurred to me.
It just seemed to me like that I couldn't not. I've been waiting for a chance to have Cutler's Artisan 33 bourbon as our beverage, and I couldn't pass this opportunity up.
This is my favorite bourbon. It's the bourbon that got me into drinking bourbon.
Is it really?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You bought a bottle and you shared some with me, and I thought, this is so delicious. Oh, we're going with the bullet glasses.
This is the second episode, I think, in a row. But I mean, we're doing a World War II movie.
Here, I'm gonna do an Instagram right now, an Instagram story of my Starbucks cup right next to the 33
on mic.
Yeah. So here, if you, I'll have to. You know what? I'll do it on the actual feed, the Instagram feed, so that when you listen to this broadcast, you can see this photo. This is coffee to whiskey. In under an hour, a good day. There, it's live right now on Instagram, so go check it out.
This is like the third episode where you've made that statement. I think it needs to be a thing.
Coffee to whiskey.
Actually, that could be the title of the segment.
There you go, coffee to whiskey.
Coffee to whiskey.
Awesome. I wish I could share this whiskey with you. It's just so delicious. If you have the opportunity and you're in Southern California, go to Cutler's in Santa Barbara.
It's a very small operation. I mean, their entire distillery would probably fit inside this apartment.
You mean inside the studio? Yes, that was perfect.
Your drink, sir.
Merci.
What should we drink to, sir? Well, down with Hitler. All the way down, sir.
It smells like caramel and God.
It smells like God. If there's a blurb for whiskey bottles, that's it.
If there were a God, this is what he would smell like. Or she. All right, let's drink this.
Wow. It's such a gorgeous color.
When you see alcohol in movies, this is the color they're shooting for.
Yeah.
This is what whiskey should look like.
This is liquid gold.
It tastes like if you were to let caramel melt on your tongue with a little bit of honey, and it has enough bite to be really satisfying, like a really satisfying whiskey drinking experience. Oh, it's so good. I'm going to drink this slow.
I must say, damn good stuff, sir. Thank you, Ian Cutler, for making such an amazing product.
And we finally get to drink it on mic. You nailed it. You nailed it. We're going to finish our whiskey and we'll be back with Act 3.
No, we're not going to finish this. We're going to go slow.
Act 3 begins with the road back. The hero is pursued by the vengeful forces she disturbed when she sees the sword. Okay, there's a lot of plot here. I'm going to dive in. Hans Landa arrives at the scene of the massacre and finds a single woman's shoe.
Yeah.
As well as a napkin that Bridget von Hammersmark autographed, and now he knows she's spying for the other side. So Chapter 5 opens with Shoshana standing near that big circular window on the Death Star. David Bowie is growling about putting out fires with gasoline.
Growling.
And he's such a great singer. And Shoshana prepares for the big night. She puts on her makeup like war paint and puts her gun in her purse.
Yep. She even chambers around.
Yes,
she's ready.
She is ready. I will say that the thing where she draws the stripes of makeup across her face, I thought that was one step too far. It was such an obvious moment, but he plays with tone in that way. So it was like, look, her makeup is war paint.
He's playing a David Bowie song. Putting out the fire with gasoline.
All right, so subtlety might not be.
This is Tarantino saying, okay, strap on your seatbelts.
Yeah,
it's about to happen.
You're right. And I bet in the theater it was one of those moments.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, was it?
Yes, it was.
So then we see in flashback the planning and preparations that Shoshana and Marcel have made approaching the premiere, including making their own little propaganda film.
Right.
So Landa arrives and asks Bridget von Hammersmark about the cast on her leg. And he makes it subtly clear that he doesn't buy her alibi. And then there's a hilarious scene in which Christoph Waltz shows off his Italian by making Brad Pitt and his army buds say their fake Italian names over and over and over again, thereby making it apparent that he doesn't buy their stories either.
Right.
Antonio Margareti.
Ancora?
Margareti.
Un'altra volta, ma adesso vorrei proprio sentire la musica delle parole.
Margareti.
This is further an oh crap moment because Bridget von Hammersmark has already said that Germans don't have a good ear for Italian.
Right.
So I think if you guys just like mumble some Italian, we'll be able to get through this.
Then Landa asks von Hammersmark for a private moment. He gets her alone in a room and he asks to see her foot. And this is Tarantino's suspense at its best. We know that Landa knows she's a spy, but we get to see her experiencing it as she reaches into his coat pocket and pulls out the shoe. and he fits it to her foot in an obscene parody of Cinderella.
And it clicks into place.
And she says, "What now, Colonel?" And Landa jumps on her and strangles her to death.
Goes ape.
We have seen him personally commit horrible violence at the very beginning of the film. No,
not him
he doesn't
personally.
shoot. Yeah, we haven't seen him do any violence,
Yeah.
right? And then he just and I didn't expect that.
No.
I expected him to have his henchmen come in.
Right.
He strangles her to death.
Or at least to arrest her or something, but no. And he's screaming while he jumps across the room. He's, ah!
Yeah, shocking moment.
We've never seen him like this before, and we don't see him like this again.
Having confirmed that she's a spy and murdered her, Landa orders his men to apprehend Aldo. But instead of stopping the plot to assassinate Hitler and his lieutenants and then having them executed, he uses Aldo as a bargaining chip to negotiate immunity with the American government.
Right.
Didn't see that coming.
Not at all.
So he knows they're going to lose the war, and he uses this situation to, and that scene with the phone and he pours them glasses of wine, and
it's incredible.
They're tied up. They can't drink the wine anyway. You see his sociopathy in full swing there, I think. Zoller finds Shoshana in the projection booth, and he tries to be charming, but she's having none of it because she's got a crucial thing that's about to happen.
Right.
She's about to execute her plan. But then he basically bursts through the door and begins to berate her, and she switches gears and seduces him, or pretends to seduce him,
right,
by being the French, disinterested French girl. And then, in a classic Tarantino double cross, she shoots him in the back multiple times.
Yep.
And then the music swells as he's lying there, supposedly dead on the floor.
Yeah.
And she sees him kind of move, and Zoller's on the screen in the movie theater looking pensive, and so she sort of like approaches him, maybe to give comfort to a dying man, and he rolls over and caps her, not once, not twice, but 3 times, then 4 times.
Yeah.
Unlike Brad Pitt in Seven, who literally empties his gun on John Doe. It's a special gun that holds 7 bullets. I think we both know that I'm right here. It's a 7-bullet gun. He empties it. And our 2 paisanos, Danny and Omar, make their final move. Right? Danny masquerading as a waiter.
Okay, no, we've got that cut. The music as it's swelling as Shoshana and Zoller lie dying on the floor. And it's just this emotional moment, and then you smash cut to...
When I kill that guy, you got 30 feet to get to that guy. Can you do it? I have to.
It's just a surprising comedic moment.
Yes.
You know, I'm like, what? You're getting ripped out of this emotional scene where this character that you've been rooting for the whole time.
I just love that Tarantino, he's been setting stuff up for 2 hours and 15 minutes, and now that he's here, everybody gonna die.
Yeah. So this is Tarantino playground.
Yes. So Danny straps on his patented glove gun TM and approaches the door to Hitler's private box with a glass of water. He and Donnie murder the SS guys guarding the door. Shoshana's film plays on screen, and her face looms massive on the screen like Oz. And she says,
I have a message for Germany. That you are all going to die.
Projekt aus!
And I want you to look deep into the face of the Jew who is going to do it.
Marcel, backstage, behind the screen, flicks a cigarette in slow-mo.
Yep.
It lands in a massive pile of highly flammable film reels that have been unspooled. And the screen goes up in flame just as Donnie and Omar burst into the opera box with machine guns and riddle Hitler and Goebbels with bullets.
Yeah.
And then...
Hold on.
Yeah.
All this is rowed back?
Yes,
Why
absolutely.
isn't this resurrection?
No. I'll get there.
Okay.
I'll get there. Well, anyway, another distortion is her face on screen, massively out of proportion. She is huge on this screen. This is another thing Tarantino is saying. This is out of proportion. This is bigger than life. This is taking this moment and twisting it out of proportion. So anyway, the theater's burning. Donnie and Omar are firing indiscriminately into the crowd.
Right.
The giant swastika falls to the ground like the chandelier in Phantom of the Opera. And then I don't know why that reminded me of this, but that Third Reich banner that's over the proscenium kind of falls. And it totally reminded me of the scene at the end of Jurassic Park when dinosaurs ruled the earth, falls of it. Anywho,
oh, God.
Bombs go off under the seats. The theater literally blows up.
Oh, Jesus. That's the road back?
That's what I got. We'll dive into your segment. Tell me I'm on.
Okay. All right. The resurrection, where the hero is purified by death in a literal or a symbolic way and returns to the land of the living, a changed person. The scene you just described, to me, was a representation of resurrection. Shoshana has been killed by Zoller, but her film is continuing to play, and her face on the screen, giant, like you said, frightening the Germans, disrupting the whole night, and then giving that order to Marcel, burn it down. Her plan continues even after her death.
I'll buy that.
In the form of this film clip and this massive face. As the theater burns, the screen is gone, but it's replaced by smoke. And like you're talking about, this distortion, her face is still projected on the smoke, but it's warping and wavering and terrifying. And Marcel has locked the doors of the theater, so all these Nazis are trapped inside this burning cinema.
You're absolutely right. The reason I went farther is because I think Donnie and Omar blowing Hitler's head into dust and killing all that's still vengeance to me, but her face on screen, I agree, that's a brilliant representation of resurrection. You're correct. I buy it.
I just love that image of her gigantic laughing face saying, "This is the face of Jewish vengeance."
Yes.
And then Donnie and Omar. Daka, 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 daka.
I mean, I wish I could see the other footage of that, whatever, that wax head of Hitler just getting blown.
Oh my God.
They shoot and shoot and shoot.
Yeah.
And how satisfying to rewrite history to where Hitler is just blown up. Anyway, but then I had one other element, which is it butts up against Elixir, but it's not, in my opinion. So deep in the forest at the edge of the American lines, Harman stops the truck and Landa releases Aldo from his bonds. That, to me, is the resurrection of Aldo. He had been captured. He was neutralized, essentially.
Yeah, the Bastards' plan could have been kaput.
So then he's released, and that's a kind of resurrection.
I'll buy that, sure.
Yeah. So that brings us to Return with the Elixir. Freedom to live. Our hero, having won some precious treasure or reward, now returns to the ordinary world to share the spoils of battle.
Let's make pancakes!
To share the spoils of battle. The elixir here, the spoils of war, is the swastika that Aldo carves into Colonel Landa's forehead.
Oh, jeez, yeah.
He may survive the movie. The villain survives, but he gets his comeuppance. He'll never be able to hide his past as a Nazi. That's his justice, and it's justice probably better than just having him die. This is he lives
forever.
He was trying to completely escape accountability.
Yes.
He was going to go live in America, a rich life on Nantucket, be a citizen.
Yeah.
And now he's got it on his forehead forever.
Yeah. That final shot is such a Tarantino shot. You know, he's always got scenes of the camera facing up, looking up at people. And to have Aldo Raine say,
"You know something, you rich? I think this just might be my masterpiece."
I think that's Tarantino saying that, because this is one of his. I think this is one of his best movies.
I
really
loved it so much. Watching that movie made me regret not having watched more movies. That's the thing about Tarantino, is he reminds you how much you love movies.
Oh yeah,
because he loves movies so much.
Yes, and I want to know about all the movies that he knows.
Yes.
You know, he and Eli Roth, they both are real, I mean, just passionate students of cinema. I'm surprised that you did not see this film until now.
I'm disappointed in myself.
I'm disappointed in you too.
But that's what this podcast is for.
But it's okay. This is your resurrection.
I expected our patrons to choose Pulp Fiction because that's the most non-linear of the films, and I'm so glad.
The most non-linear. Yeah.
Yeah.
I heard that backwards.
Like if I were a patron, I'd be like, haha, screw you guys, do Pulp Fiction. But I'm glad they chose Inglourious Basterds.
Well, we have reached the end of this journey. Join us next month when we cover Hello Kitty Island Adventure. I don't know.
Yeah, you'll have to stay tuned to find out.
Yeah, head over to patreon.com/heroesjourney, and we'll have some voting options up there for you.
If you like what you heard, please subscribe on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. Tell 7 friends about it, one for each bullet that Brad Pitt fires in 7.
Oh.
And please give us a 5-star review on iTunes.
The Hero's Journey is produced by Jeff Garvin and Dan Zarzana with original music by Taylor Jordan. Thanks to Dean Ethington for designing our logo. And in this episode, we have thoroughly enjoyed Cutler's Artisan Spirits 33 Straight Bourbon Whiskey.
C'est très très bon. Délicieux. Inglourious Basterds.
Sehr gut.
Inglourious Basterds is copyright 2009 Visione Romantica, Inc.
Ooh.
Margheriti.
Hey, stop what you're doing. Whip out your phone. Follow us on Twitter at Heroes Podcast. Like us at Facebook.com/Heroes Journey Podcast. And check out our show notes, including links to what we're reading and watching and playing and drinking at www.heroesjourneypodcast.com.
And don't forget, we have an Instagram that's pretty great. Please go to our Instagram. Until next time,
Reisen weiter.
Margheriti.